This is the Page Publishing Book Club. How you doing? I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Just because you're a person of color doesn't necessarily mean you're on the same page as all of the various movements and organizations out there purporting to support the black community. Earl Buckingham, a former coach in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, believes his community has to take a good, hard look at what's going on and do its best to rectify one situation at a time. The title of his book is provocative: How to Kill a Black Man.
Originally, the book was just going to be about my frustration with how we as black people treat one another, and the black-on-black crime that has been taking place in the country. And no one really address it and talk about it and take responsibility for it in my community. And so that was the original reason for even writing the book. But then when all of these incidences with police officers, killing, unarmed black people, I had to rethink about what I wanted to talk about. I didn't feel like I could talk about what we're doing to ourselves as a black community and not address what was taking place with a lot of the black people being killed while under arrest by police officers. So then I decided to go back and totally revamp how I wanted to talk about what I wanted to talk about. And so then I said, well, since I'm writing and fussing, I might as well get everything off my chest I want to fuss about. We're our own worst enemy. A lot of times, some of the things that we do to one another is worse than, quote unquote, the white man that's done to us. I feel like what we are doing to one another as a community is having a much more negative effect than racism and all the other stuff that people always want to seem to be popular in talking about today. I was fired by a black man at a historically black college as a football coach in 2013. And I wasn't fired because I was doing a bad job. I was just fired because they were jealous of my performance and just some of the things I had experienced in the past. But I've worked under black leadership and I've worked under white leadership as an assistant coach. And I was actually treated much worse by the majority of the black coaches that I worked for than I was the white coaches I worked for. And then when I start to look at overall, even outside of, my profession of coaching football, just how we as black people often treat each other, it's shameful. It's shameful. And most black people would agree with me. Well, I would imagine just about all of them, if they heard me say that, would agree with that statement. And so that was something that was the catalyst of the book, me being fired by another black man. And he couldn't give me to this day a reason for firing me from my job. We had won the national championship the year before, and then the next year we didn't have a good year. So I was the only coach on the staff that was let go, even though the particular position I had was clearly that I was in charge of was clearly the most productive position on the field. Anybody would tell you that. There's no real organization going on right now as far as leadership in the black community is concerned. Back in the civil rights movement, you had clearly defined leaders that had a clearly defined game plan. And now, all it takes is just to pull up a sign that says BLM or whatever, or just say you the Black Lives Matters movement, and that's it. You don't have to have any kind of credentials or any kind of credibility. And so you have one person saying this, another person saying that, but the majority of black people, you know, may have a different perspective than this person who's speaking for everybody. And so it just makes everything very confusing.
Do you have any suggestions? Like, how do we rectify this?
Well, one of the things that we need to be willing to address it and acknowledge that it's there, because, like I said, it's very, very popular. Everybody blame everything on Trump instead of really, really looking critically at the situation and being honest and saying, this is where we need to go. And I talk about in the book, one of the things that makes it hard on us as black people, from my perspective, we have a hard time agreeing on anything. I talk about that in the book. It's hard for us to come together and agree. And then we can end up going all different directions and all over the place. And it just even becomes more confusing. So if we can come together and acknowledge this is the problem and stay on task, that this is the problem and that we need to be unified and together on what we need, and denounce stuff that doesn't align with those issues, like you talking about defund the police and all that. The majority of black people think that's crazy. That was being pushed, and all it did was got more black people killed. And so my solution is to get the law enforcement industry to own up to bad police officers. That doesn't mean everybody's bad, but just a small percentage of them can give them all a bad name. And they, instead of being defensive whenever we call a bad police officer to task, the law enforcement industry should not be in a position of cover up, but to condemn it when they have officers that go afoul of the law.
Oh, you're definitely giving us some things to think about here, Earl. Thank you. Jabril Rasheed, like so many other people, got tied up in the 2008 collapse of the housing market when interest rates were low, credit was easy, regulation insufficient, and bad subprime mortgages sent people into bankruptcy and in some cases jail. The name of his book, The Field That Wasn't Leveled.
Was doing some really big deals here in the city of Dallas, and I got tied up into a city hall in real estate development. And the government got involved. It involved my company, which was a minority development company, real estate company. And so I began to write because I fought the government. I lost, went to prison, and began to write and to tell this story about the government and how they manufacture cases and how they send innocent people, mass incarceration, through their wrongful convictions. And so that would inspire me to really begin to write because I wanted to be able to tell my story from rags to riches and be able to help the youth.
So you really do have a rags to riches story. I mean, you grew up in a lower middle class neighborhood.
Yes.
And you ended up trying out for the New York Giants.
Yes, I did in 1990. Yes. The year they won the Super Bowl.
So you must be a very gifted athlete, which probably didn't hurt you along the way, right?
Right. Yeah, I was blessed to be able to letter in 3 different sports in high school, basketball, football, and track. And I had many, many offers in football. So I saw sports as an opportunity to continue to advance and further my education. So I took advantage of that.
So you ended up leaving sports and running this company.
Working for different companies, financial companies and stuff led me into eventually starting my own company, Rasheed Investments.
Okay. And then you got mixed up in the housing crisis of 2008.
Yes, I was flipping houses. And my thing was, well, what would bring the FBI into this jurisdiction, so to speak? And as I began to research, I found out that public corruption is the 4th highest thing on their list. So back at that time, if you recall, if you ever seen the movie The Big Short,
Yes.
okay, explains a whole lot. And when I look back on it now, the reason why I used the word earlier about manufactured cases, because the FBI is just like commission workers. If they're not prosecuting cases or manufacturing cases, they got to pretty much find something else to do because everything is based on the United States Treasury. And it's all about money. It's about greed. And you have this predatory lending. These individuals didn't even qualify. And the banks knew that they didn't qualify. But the way they start money panics and hit the reset button, this is what they do. And this is why the 1% of the wealthy people are constantly winning. So these are the things that I had to learn along the way to even raise my business IQ up even more.
What were you accused of?
I have actually 2 cases. I was accused of the public corruption case. So my case was a case of the classical big fish catch little fish to make a bigger case. And so as I was going to these developments, my company was called Raw Meal. Me and a very good friend of mine, we had put our companies together, did a consortium, so we can get into the minority participation in the city of Dallas. In the process of doing so, you got a lot of African-American politicians who live in the southern sector of Dallas. So they had to get those people kind of removed out of the way so they can come back and do all of the major developments. It was never a case of I'm going to go down here to City Hall and try to get on some deals. And all of a sudden, I'm going to bid on the same projects that they're going to be doing in the city of Dallas, in the southern sector of Dallas, and I wind up in an investigation that was ongoing.
And somehow you end up going to jail?
Yep, not somehow. I actually went to jail. They charged me. I had 1 count in the public corruption case. My company never received a contract. I never got any money. But here's what they did at the time of this investigation. Never been in any trouble. They investigated my real estate company for me doing rehabbing properties because, again, they wanted me to testify against those who was working as politicians for the city of Dallas, and I refused to do it.
Did you have anything on them?
No, no, absolutely not. I didn't have anything to tell them. I went to prison for 12 years, 6 months, and 17 days. And I could have actually took the Rule 35 and probably did 26 months, 2 years, and been home. But my principles and my integrity was not to be compromised. And when I got out, I said I wasn't going to make this about me. I want to be able to come out, tell my story, talk to the youth, to be able to help these single parent moms and these people who are going to prison. You know, this mass incarceration rate was so high. And there's a reason for that. It's a reason for that. And I put that in detail in the book to feel there was a level, because we're not playing with a level playing field at all.
All right, Jabril, thank you. Clyde Walcott worked for the Department of Homeless Services in New York City. Not an easy job. And when he retired, he finally found the time to write poetry again. Now he's published realistic passage, sociological, and philosophical poetry.
From a tender age, I did nursery rhymes in school, and we were told to write our own nursery rhymes. I did that, and that was a springboard for me. It opened up and it expanded my talent. And then I was writing, and then I collected a lot of poems. And then later, I had a dream whereby I should publish a book, which I did.
Well, good for you. Do you want to share one with me?
Yes, I can do that. I'm going to do the first one. It's my favorite, and it's called Paradise. If only I can migrate to a land of peace, a place where tranquility will never cease. Yes, where the gentle breeze fills the air, enjoying nature as I relax in my chair. A resident of joy, bliss, and happiness. An environment like this is surely blessed. Calmly relaxing, where the air is fresh and immaculate, a superb domain for a lovely romantic date. Leisurely inhaling the aroma of beautiful flowers, this is a paradise for many young lovers. To listen to melody of the birds as they sing, what relaxing comfort to the soul it brings. While gazing at the moon as it silhouettes the earth, as it wends its way swiftly to the north. The song from the whistling cricket echoes the night. Oh, I am amazed, this is just right. And life seems to be temperate without any stress. One cannot expect to enjoy anything less. Love and kindness to humanity I will exercise. My great desire is to be in a land of paradise.
Beautiful.
I did put the book on social media. I posted it on Facebook, and a lot of people, a lot of my friends and relatives, they were amazed and they purchased the book.
So you're going to keep writing?
Yes, I'm going to keep writing. Yes, of course. As a matter of fact, I start writing in, but it's just like time does not permit me. I have so many activities I'm into, but I have to space myself out. Yes, I'm going to write. I'm not going to stop writing.
What other activities are you doing?
Okay, like 2 days per week, I go to a community center with my wife, whereby you meet other people and we interact.
I bet you could read your poetry there.
Okay, maybe I can ask them. That's a,
Wouldn't that be nice?
I want to ask them if, because they have other activities too. I don't know if they can fit me in. They have bingos and stuff like that. So they do have their activities. So I don't know if I can give them a slot. I do not know. I'm not sure, but I can investigate.
All right, all you can do is try, Clyde. Thank you. Ovid Priffer, a Jewish emigre who lived in Israel when it was first a state, then Canada, and finally the U.S., tells the story of an Eastern European family fighting for survival during the First and Second World Wars in his book, On the Edge of the Precipice. How long you been writing, Ovid?
I was infected by the bug around 16 years old. But I never did any more than that for it. I discovered that the best thing to do was leave it alone because I wasn't ready for what I really had to do. But when my parents died, some years later, I began to feel that I really wanted to write something to leave some kind of legacy that they had been here, because I felt that their story was so extraordinary and what they had passed through should be left as a legacy. I think that people might have learned something from the way they conducted themselves throughout their lives. And so I wrote it. I sat down about 6 years ago and I started to write it. And I'm glad that I finished it finally last year. And here I am. It's about an Eastern European family caught in the earliest 20th century, amashed between the First and the Second World War, the coming of communism, and then the birth of the State of Israel. They passed through all this. And then finally the book ends in North America. It's really a story of really great sacrifice and great loss. I'm talking about sacrifice. The theme throughout the book is, what are the things that are important? What are the things that we should live for? And the things that these protagonists realize, that's all that's really important, is basically love. Love for one another in the stance of all adversity. The main character, Marcel Issachar, is nothing else but a pragmatist. He's not an intellectual, caught in a very, very less than a pragmatic world. And in spite of all the terrible things that happen to him, he never loses his humanity. He remains what he really is in spite of the fact that he's ravaged. He loses everything that he has. But then there's this terrible thing that happens. And throughout this period of time and all the things that he's passed through, it taints him and corrupts him. He begins to misconstrue greed for need. And that in itself is what really destroys him at the very end. There is nothing more extraordinary than when a man is willing to put down his life for other people. And this is exactly what you see in this book.
It's a great lesson to be learned there, Ovid. Thank you. For Jesse Reese, writing is relaxation after a long day as a maintenance specialist for an automotive group. And after several years, a story came to him. It's entitled, We Are the Broken, Glimpse into a Tormented Mind.
The story is based on a character's life, the ups and downs that life has to offer. Then it kind of morphs into something a little out there. I joke with people and say, yeah, you got to have a touch of insanity to understand the rest of the book. It's nameless. It's about the main character, his life, whether it's growing up, being divorced, having children, just kind of a life story. And then about halfway through, that's when it kind of has some twists and turns and is a roller coaster ride for the reader. They really don't know what's going to happen next. It goes into mind games that the character plays with himself of what's real, what's not, what's in front of him, what's behind him. Just, I don't know, twisting thoughts. It's what he's going through is what a lot of people go through, of getting inside their own head and then trying to get back outside of his own head. So it's definitely a suspenseful read from about halfway to the end. It's his journey in life and then his journey mentally.
Does he have like a mental breakdown, or does he not know what's real, what's not?
I will let the readers decide whether or not it's a mental breakdown or just thoughts. It gets the reader's attention and gets them thinking. I wrote it as if he did not have a mental breakdown, but I've had some feedback from some good friends that say, yeah, I couldn't decide as I was reading it what's real, what's not, whether or not he was doing things or whether or not it was all in his head. So it definitely leaves the readers wondering what the character actually is really doing. You know, we all have things, stuff, and junk that happen to us in life, and it's what we do with those things in life that defines who we are and what we do.
All right, Jesse, thank you. A self described jungle gym for his 10-year-old daughter, Lawrence Reyes, is a parts and warehouse tech turned children's book writer. And together they explore the universe in the adventures of Papa Bear and Little Monkey.
I wanted to keep my relationship with my daughter as fun as possible. We started off by going on little trips, museums, airfields, stuff like that. And I actually started it as a hashtag. And that hashtag turned into, hey, let's write a book. And I asked her where she wanted to go first. And she said, let's go to space. And from that point on, it was just literally every day was pick up as much information on the planets as you can, find out a couple of interesting things, and then turn that children's book into something hopefully families will like and learn from. We use the NASA site for the research on the actual planets themselves. We're actually going through our solar system. So we visit each of the planets and asteroid belts, and I give you one or two interesting facts about each of the planets. Did you know that Mercury has ice on its north pole? And Mercury is the closest planet to the sun. So you probably wouldn't figure, hey, that being that close, that there's no way there's going to be ice there. Or you have two planets that rotate counterclockwise, things like that. And then some gimmies like Neptune was named after a god. So we do that kind of stuff, hopefully imparting some type of knowledge.
Are Papa Bear and Little Monkey in a spaceship? Are they walking? I mean, how are they visiting?
So they're visiting on a spaceship. So for us, I asked her what vehicle she wanted to start with. She said, let's do a covered wagon. So this whole series of books is going to be more imagine driven. So my whole thing is of imagination is everywhere, and adventures are everywhere because of imagination. So I have her close her eyes, and that wagon turns into a rocket ship. And that's how we enter space and explore the universe.
What a creative man you are.
I try to be. I definitely try to be. It's something that, again, for me, my daughter's everything in the world to me. So I want to make sure for her that I leave something for her, and there's a legacy for her to go, hey, that was me.
Are you able to read this book to her friends or to her classmates?
I made sure her school got a copy. So I actually gave a hard copy to her principal at her elementary school. And from what I understand, the librarian actually reads it to the first graders.
Nice. Way to go. I can't wait to see what other adventures you guys are going to be going on. Thanks so much, Lawrence. Finally, yoga, meditation, and healing has been the focus of Nancy Gannon, aka Niti's life, particularly for preschool kids. She's written for industry publications, but now she delivers a children's book that parents might like too. It's entitled The Heart Crystal and Other Stories.
I wrote children's stories. There are about 7 of them. And the goal of it is to make it fantastical, have the child enjoy it. At the same time, there's a value hidden inside the story and a meditative moment. After the child has read or has been read to, then the adult could say to them, because there's a meditative exercise to follow it up. Let's close our eyes and feel, get in touch with our lucky spot, and things like that. And so it extends it if they want to. There is a story about a bear who is wanting to meet his grandmother who lives on top of the mountain. And so he's asking different animals where she might be living. And each of them say, give up, go home, it's too far for you. But the bear would say, I am brave, I do not give up, and would keep walking on and meet another animal. And it goes like that. In the end, the bear reaches his grandmother and they sit together, very kind of close, huddling together on top of the mountain. The nice wind is blowing, and they feel this wonderful moment of love and peace, and then that's the end of the story. So the person with them could say, why, close your eyes, breathe in, breathe out. Imagine that you are sitting on top of a mountain and one of your favorite persons comes and sits with you and you feel peace all around you. That could be an extension.
That is so great. It's a nice introduction to mindfulness, right?
Yeah, yes. Mindfulness, excellent. These stories are excellent help with parents who have children and they want to engage them in mindfulness. Also, schools. At the same time, it's good for the mind-body yoga tradition.
Are more schools doing yoga with little kids?
Yes, yoga for sure. Meditation, some of them. I did it here in McCormick with the Head Start, First Steps, and preschool. We're talking about 60 little children in the neighborhood at the school, and they loved it. And for some reason, it just resonates with them. If it's done in a playful, story-like manner, they really enjoy.
So, are you able to promote your book through these classes?
Yes, I am, though I have to admit that the COVID time has closed some of those doors for a while or made it confusing because libraries for a while we're not wanting to have live spaces, and I want to do one where the parents bring the child, we tell a story, do a little postures with them and maybe a meditative moment and make it an experience.
Do you see that coming back now?
I do. I think a lot more people are vaccinated, and so I do think that we are starting to get more normal, but it's slow.
What a great idea, Nancy.
Thank you.
Good for the parents as well.
Thank you.
All right. We need all the help we can get, don't you think? Everybody, breathe deep. In through the nose, out through the mouth. And that is a wrap for this edition of the Page Publishing Book Club. Thank you, authors, for sharing your stories, and thank you for joining us. We really do appreciate it. We have more where this came from. Just go to 710WOR.com and download the podcast. We have a new one posted every single week. In the meantime, what's your story? Might be time to share it. What do you think? Right here on the Page Publishing Book Club. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. I'll catch you next time.